Hello all, I'm Kelley Harrell and you're listening to What in the Weird. So today I'm going to talk about the healing story, a component of shamanism that we hear a lot about, but there are specific components of that healing story that I'd like to discuss in depth. So some of what I'm going to talk about today is based on my book, Teen Spirit Guide to Modern Shamanism, which came out several years ago. You can find it on Amazon and get copies, signed copies from my Etsy shop. And don't let the teen spirit part throw you. I didn't get to choose that title, so don't judge. The book was written with young adults in mind, although the context is intended for the called young at heart. And therein lies the crux of the show, calling. As I like to say, we're all born. None of us are born initiated. What does that mean? Well, in terms of shamanism, there's a point on our path that we have to respond to the tug to stand between the worlds. We have to respond to calling. Traditionally, calling comes in the form of crisis, because if it knocked on the door with truffles and a bouquet of flowers, we wouldn't likely get the memo that change has to occur. We change as a result of discomfort. It's just how we're wired. So for that reason, crisis is often the catalyst perceived as the calling to shamanism. Not all, but many shamans indicate having an experience that we now refer to in the modern vernacular as spiritual emergency, a defining moment so profound that the way we view ourselves in the world is permanently changed. So what kind of crisis are we talking about? Literal death, psychological or emotional illness, physical illness, you name it. It's personal. That's what makes it a healing story. Whatever wounding inflicts the inability to perceive yourself, the world, or yourself in the world the same. Whatever leaves you unable to go back to your life the same way, that's the kind of crisis we're talking about. So the ability to move through this experience to an acceptance of a new worldview is a hallmark of shamanism. This metamorphosis is referred to as the classic shamanic death. Why is the death shamanic? Because you came through it, because you completed the initiation. Otherwise, it's just death. It's unresolved PTSD. It's an incomplete initiation. So, rising from that kind of psychic hurt came the phrase wounded healer, or someone who has survived intense pain by living in the wound, and in doing so learned to thrive beyond it. The thriving beyond it part gets left out of a lot of romanticized takes on the role of shaman. The wound doesn't validate you as a shaman. Healing the wound does. Just because you're in crisis and feeling a calling doesn't make you a shaman. Coming through the other end of the crisis is what leads you to the role of shaman. So this next little bit comes directly from the book. The timeless story of death and rebirth is known as the shamanic narrative, or more commonly, a healing story. Healing stories are magical tales born from personal tribulation and victory, which are then shared. The process of sharing the personal narrative has several effects. In hearing the story, empathy is generated in listeners. They feel the emotions of the storyteller, which stir memories and feelings of their similar experience. Listeners become inspired. They own and value their personal stories. Listeners' personal stories are evoked. The wound is witnessed. Thus, healing becomes possible, as does a vision for life beyond the wound. Through ownership of the process, healing occurs. Listening to healers tell their stories, inspiration is shared. Healing oneself is key to eventually working with others. The idea isn't that we become free of all affliction. Rather, we develop and commit to using the healing resources available to us through actively balancing the hardships of life. We gain insight into how to better be of service to others. We attract those who need the help and insight we have to give. We attract people who are or have gone through situations similar to our own. There is no more animistic a mechanism than the healing story. connection to and activation of the symbols in the story create the basic structure for shamanic healing. In this tradition of one person sharing the narrative, a single story heals a village. This is the healing story. If you've read Teen Spirit Guide to Modern Shamanism, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Better still, I'd love to hear your healing story. Call in on Anchor or email me at kelly@soulintentarts.com or catch me on Instagram as Kelley Soul Arts. I'm Kelley Harrell. Thanks for listening to What in the Weird. Dream well.